talk about that. So page 2, this is also on the calculator portion, okay? So it says solve the equation by graphing. So you have to do this on your graphing calculator. Well, you don't have to do this on your graphing calculator. You have to graph it, and you have to write a table with at least 5 points. It is something that you will be allowed to use your graphing calculator with. So when you're solving by graphing, all you need to do is find your x-intercepts, and then this says to include a table with at least 5 points. This is something else I recommend because you have a test that is 3 pages, so you're going to want to be mindful of your time. Okay, I would use my graphing calculator to do my table. You just have to know where the middle is, so you do the opposite of b over 2a. Your b value is always in front of x. So if your b value is -4, the opposite is +4. If you can't see your a value, that just means your a value is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so you know that goes in the middle of your table. Okay, so then you can find at 2 you're at -4, and then you can go 3, 4. You can go 1, 0. Okay, and then you can plot your points. Now, if you need to, and in this one you didn't, but if on your test, if you get one like we did on our homework where you have to keep scrolling, then that's something that you could do. So you have 3, -3. You have 1, -3. And just be careful, make sure whatever scale they give you that you're graphing that. And then look, at 5, you're at 5, so you can graph that as well. And at -1, you are also at 5. Okay, so this is going to give you a nice picture of your parabola, and then your answer is going to be your x-intercepts. So we are lucky here, and you can see your x-intercepts on your table. Okay, so your answer, x equals 0 and 4. It's okay if you don't put the x equals. You can also just write 0 and 4, that's fine. Okay, either one of those are correct.
Why don't you have it go all the way up past like 10?
That is why. Like you could, yeah. So like,
I did it.
Yeah.
I did it to 12, but I just was wondering why you don't just continue drawing your line.
Yeah, it just because the next one was 12 and it wasn't on my graph, so I just used the arrows. Like if it's not on your giving grid.
So you don't need to go all the way up to the top.
As long as you put all the points on there that fit up to 10, you're good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, now for 5, there's going to be, some of you might have graphs that look slightly different than mine. We should all have, if the solution is x equals -3, 1, 2, -3, we should all have the vertex here. Okay, but just depending on how wide or narrow yours is, that doesn't matter as long as you just have that 1 point. For this one, it said the solutions are -2 and 2. Okay, so again, yours might vary slightly from mine. You just have to make sure it crosses the x-axis at -2 and 2. Now for this one, there are multiple answers. You could have a parabola over here going up. You could have a parabola in quadrant 1 opening upward. If you have a parabola here, I'm going to draw something you can't have, okay? You cannot have this. I'm going to put a little X through it. Because if you have this, what do those arrows mean? Yeah, they're going to go up and they're going to cross the x-axis. Okay, so you can't have that. So you can't have something below the line going upward. You can't have something above the line going downward. Okay, because then it eventually will cross. All right, and then for 6, you are using a quadratic equation to find 2 real numbers. Your answer should be 2 real numbers. If it's not, let's just go back to the directions so we understand what we're looking for. Do you have to use a quadratic equation? Yep, this should be in your work, but then your answer should be the two real numbers. So remember, they give you a sum and they give you a product. So if you think of one number is x, okay, the other number is going to be 12 minus x. So I'm fine if you guys just start by writing the product. If you have a number x, the other number is going to be 12 minus x. Okay, and that's because whatever your other number is, you would have to subtract it from 12 to find its buddy that makes the sum. Okay, and then the product is negative 85, so you're going to distribute. And then from here, you can really have two different equations. So I'm somebody that likes to keep their x squared positive. So I moved everything, the plus x squared and the 12x, I moved everything to this side to get x squared minus 12x minus 85. You do have to have the quadratic equation here. Okay, or some of you just move this because it's one step, and I totally get that. So your other equation you could have, if you move the 85 over, you could have negative x squared plus 12x plus 85 equals 0. You don't have to write both down. Just as long as you have one of those, know that that's okay. Okay, but this is your quad equation. You have to have that in your work. Okay, then what you're going to do is you are going to use your table on your graphing calc to find the x-intercepts. And to find the x-intercepts, you're looking for the y-coordinate equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to substitute in one of those equations. So I'm going to substitute in x squared minus 12x and minus 85 into my y equals. And then I'm just scrolling through my table and I'm looking for where y is 0. And look, do you see these numbers are getting closer and closer to 0? So I found one. So I have 17 and 0, and then I can scroll to find the other one. If you know the product is a negative and this is positive, then you know your other number is what? A negative number. Okay, and then like I told you before, you can also just, if the sum is 12, 17 plus negative 5 is 12. You could think of it that way. So it's negative 5 and 17. You do not have to write this work down on your test. This is something so you can see, hey, where did Miss Whipple get those? Because if I just put that and put those as the answers, you'd be like, what is going on? So this is just a visual to help you. We use the table to find where the y's were 0, okay? All right, I feel like you guys are really good at this one. What are you looking for in the table? Yep, exactly. So look for the sign change from positive to negative. Okay, so your two answers should be between 3 and 4 and between 5 and 6. And I am fine if you abbreviate. And again, the sign change, you are looking for those in the y coordinates. So from negative 1 to 1, that is a sign change. So it's between 3 and 4. Okay, the other sign change just happens to be right next door. Goes from 1 to negative 1. Okay? All right, the next one is a graphing calculator question. So remember, when it comes time for a test or a quiz, like if you keep getting an error, I can't tell you what to do on the day of the test. So we should practice this one together. That way, if you have any issues with the bounds, I can help you. So they're giving you a formula, same formula we had in our notes, where you have the h of t is the height of the object, v sub 0 is the initial velocity, t is the time, h sub 0 is the initial height from the launch, and it says to round to the nearest tenth if you need to. Okay, so if it's telling you what to round to, I either highlight that or underline And if you'd like to use like a highlighter for your test, I am perfectly fine with that. If that helps you stay organized with some of those like smaller things, that is fine. Okay, so they tell you the basketball player shoots the ball with an upward velocity of 24 feet per second, and the ball is 6 feet above the ground. Okay, so the upward velocity, that is going to be your V sub 0, that's your 24, and then the H sub 0 is 6. So we're going to plug it back in to your original equation. Okay, and then when you are using the graphing calculator to determine how long it will take the ball to hit the ground, you are trying to find t. You are trying to find the time. Okay, so your time is positive. So when you're doing this and you're graphing this, you only have to worry about finding the positive value. So when I first explained this to you in your notes, we found both of them. Okay, when you're doing this on your test, you don't have to find both of them because we've already investigated and talked about how you only need your positive answer. Okay, so again, when you're on the test, don't waste time finding that if you know you're going to reject it. And the nice thing about this, when you're graphing it, see how I can't see the top? Does that even matter for this? No, because you are finding your zeros, the x-intercepts. So you have to go to second calc. Okay, and the calc is above the trace button. And then what you're going to go is to the 0. Okay, so it's asking you for the left bound. So this is a negative 0, so I'm not even going to find that. I just have to find the positive. So I'm going to use my right arrow. I'm going to go as close to the x-intercept as possible. Okay, and then I'm just going to arrow once to the left for the left bound. I'm going to go back to the center as close as possible and arrow once to the right. Now you have to have one of your bounds above the x-axis and one below. If you don't, it's going to give you an error. That's what I'm saying. If that's something that you struggled with, let's practice, make sure we understand it. And then your guess, you can either leave it there, or I always like to get it as close as possible. Either way, they're going to give you the correct answer. And then, do you see here they're giving you your x is 1.71 ... If you're rounding to the nearest tenth, you only have to look at the second value to determine what to round it to. So this means I'm going to keep it, and this is time. So we have to put our unit on it. So this is 1.7 seconds. Now, if you look here, they have this y equals 1e to the negative 12th. So do we understand what that means, the 1e to the negative 12th? Or did that throw some of us off a little bit? Oh, did yours say exactly 0? Oh, that's because you have to do the 0. So make sure that you are using the 0 feature and not just tracing it. Okay, some of your calculators might actually do 0. Some of the newer ones are rounding it so good that they're using the scientific notation. So whenever you have 1e to the negative 12, do we know that means 1 times 10 to the negative 12? Okay, so think about what that means. If you have a 1 times 10 to the negative 12, then how many places are you moving your decimal? You're moving it 12 times. Okay, so that is the same thing as having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then the 1, because the 12th spot is there. What does that round to? 0. Okay, so this is 0. This is another way you will see 0. It's just your calculator is being very, very exact with that.